everybody. This is Matt Whitaker from the Truth and Conviction series. I'm the writer and director, and I want to extend a warm welcome to everybody who's tuning in. I know there will be a bunch more tuning in later, but I have to jump into something right away. I need to get a message to all of you wonderful Piano Guys fans who are tuning in. You've been seeing the advertisements that we've had up that the Piano Guys were going to be with us tonight. There's been some unforeseen circumstances that they were unable to make it tonight. But John Schmidt of the Piano Guys, of course, you know that, he wanted to send a special message to everybody tuning in. And so, John, take it away.
Hi, I'm John Schmidt, and I'm so sorry that I can't be on this live stream with you, but I am here talking with Matt Whitaker. We're going to talk about my family connection to this amazing story. The background for me is that it's sort of family history for me. My mom was in Helmuth Hübner's Sunday school class. Rudy Voba, one of the three boys, ended up being my uncle. They wanted to find out what was going on in the world, and they had the feeling that they weren't getting the straight scoop. And so 16-year-old kids got on the church typewriter, typed up what they were learning, and disseminated this information. It's incredible. It's incredible. It makes you think of Joan of Arc. It makes you think of, let's make a list of amazing teenagers. And I'm sure they knew it was something that was dangerous. I know they know that because they wouldn't even tell my mom what they were doing. They wouldn't tell anyone in their Sunday school class what they're doing.
21 years ago when I first met your mother, when I was doing research for the documentary, and we did that little interview with her, I remember putting it together that I knew who John Schmidt, the pianist, was, and that I think she mentioned, yes, that's my son. I had the privilege of interviewing your mother and her sister, Hilda, 21 years ago, and you never were able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we took a minute and for you to sit down on a laptop and just watch this little time capsule. I just always assumed you'd heard all those stories before. Is that?
Yeah, I've grown up hearing those stories for sure. It should be very sobering to all of us, that the opinion basically of a child would be that feared, and it's something that we should watch out for, that kind of fear of somebody's opinion. That's something that is in my family DNA. Everyone should be able to say what they think.
Helmuth's hopes were consonant with their fears.
Mm-hmm.
That he was hoping that this would get out to everybody, and they were fearful that that the truth would get out to everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, like you say, for Helmuth, paying the ultimate price, for Carl and Rudy, years in work camps and concentration camps, but I'd forgotten that she was so close to Rudy.
He was her boyfriend. He told her everything.
Yeah, Rudy Voba and your mother were boyfriend-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten that eventually Rudy became your uncle.
Right.
Can you kind of describe to me how in the family relations did that work, that Rudy was...
Yeah, he wanted to marry my mom. She lined him up with somebody else.
And he told me that he liked me and that he wanted to marry me. And one time he even gave me a kiss. And my father was not impressed by that. But anyhow, so we were friends all through the years until he went to the concentration camp, and he took my picture with him, and it gave him comfort to endure all that. And he wanted to marry me. But I sent him to my husband's sister, and he got stuck there. And I am with her brother. So we are brothers-in-laws now. You didn't roll it there, did you?
Rudy married into the family of the girl that told him she didn't want to marry him, I guess is the way it works. And hearing what my mom had to say about freedom, was really, really impactful.
He had to pay for it with his life, and the other two boys had to pay with their freedom and had to suffer in concentration camps. Freedom really means, freedom is the most precious thing anybody can possess. And to me, I like freedom, and that's why I came to this country.
The way she said that was just...
Was she proud to be an American?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I never got to meet Rudy. He passed away before I became aware of the story, but I became very close with Carl, and he was the same way. You know, a proud German, of course, but loved America.
Absolutely.
With all of his heart.
Yeah.
When I interviewed her at the very end, almost as a coda, she kind of threw in this story about the piano. Do you mind, I'm assuming you grew up hearing that story, but do you mind kind of sharing that story of the piano and the bomb raid that your mother shares on that?
Yeah, it's just amazing, you know, the way they told that story.
In 1943, July 1943, there was an air raid, a major air raid on Hamburg. All of a sudden, my father comes and says, our house is on fire. We all have to get out. So everybody came and helped our furniture, whatever we could save.
The first thing they wanted to save was the piano.
And our house was burning, and the piano stood on the street.
As they watched the house burn down, the neighbors watched them playing the piano on the street.
Our neighbors haven't forgotten, after 20 years, after 30 years, that we played Joy to Life. Joy to life, because the lamp is still burning. That must have been a sight for the neighbors to behold.
The way I always heard the story was that they just felt that God was with them. In the street as their house was burning down, like this feeling of everything's gonna be okay.
From my perspective, this teenage girl, your mother, with her family, surrounding this piano while the house is burning, bombing raid, singing this song, this praise to God. And when she told me that story, and as I look at it now, I just think, it is in your DNA. Here's this piano that's pulled out of this house. And these years later, her son is one of the piano guys, you know?
Well, it's amazing how I look at what my mom talked about and how those values and the things that their experiences kind of get passed on.
John, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you and all the piano guys teamed up with us on Truth and Conviction. It just seems like it's just a perfect thing.
I'm elated that the story is being told by the people that did The Chosen. Are you kidding me? That is really, really, really amazing.
Be able to partner up with Angel Studios and get this out to the world, the story out to the world.
That's exciting.
Finally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't that cool? So again, great thanks to John and Stephen and all the piano guys for their sincere interest in teaming up with us on this project. Again, they were so sorry that they weren't able to make it tonight, but I was so grateful that John took the time to sit down with me beforehand and record that sweet experience. I'll tell you, as a filmmaker and somebody who loves history, and particularly World War II history, 21 years ago, when I was doing all of this research, discovering all of these things about Helmuth Hübner and his two friends at church, and all of these other friends that they had, I was just kind of obsessed, I guess, with trying to find out anybody who knew Helmut or who knew somebody who knew Helmut. And of course, my friendship with Carl was incredible and life-changing. But as I mentioned there in my conversation with John, I never got to meet Rudy. He had passed away in 1993. And so his part of the story, I'd read his book. He wrote a book, and I'd read his book. And I think, I'm trying to remember, but I think even in his book that he talks about carrying this photo when they were prisoners when they were in prison camps and after their conviction, carrying this photo of this girl that really gave him strength throughout that time. And then to sit down with that girl, John Schmidt's mom, and be able to hear the story from her mouth and get her perspective. And also that amazing, that amazing experience that she shared of during the bombing raids in 1943 when their house was on fire. And what's the first thing that they wanted to save? The piano. And I can just see that little family with that teenage daughter out in front of their house, which was burning down, and playing that song and that praise to God, and seeing the neighbors surrounding them watching this happen. And then that teenage girl doesn't marry Rudy, marries another person that they knew in their little church congregation there. But Rudy married into the family, so Rudy becomes the part of the family, and then eventually becomes this lady's son, John Schmidt's uncle. So all of those things. So I have to say it was, and there's a photo of Rudy right there, and he's about 15 years old there. That photo was taken just shortly before, in fact, may have been taken when they were in the middle of their resistance efforts. And he was arrested just shortly thereafter, and spent the next three and a half years as a prisoner. But to hear, sometimes we can look at experiences like that, I think, or at least I can, and just think it's so far removed. That was so long ago, and we may struggle to feel a connection with those things. But then I sit down with John Schmidt's mom, and she knew Helmuth, and she was there when all that was happening. And then you sit down with John, her son, who carries that legacy of a love, not only a love of all things piano and a love of music, but a love of freedom and a love of liberty, those things that were obviously passed down to him from his parents. And suddenly it's not that long ago. It's not that far back. So again, special thanks. We are already figuring it out with the piano guys. They've made it just so clear that we're going to get this rescheduled probably within the next couple weeks. And so we will have both of them on a live stream with us within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And we will let you know as soon as that's scheduled. Get that back up on, get that advertised so that you'll know when you can tune in for that. So again, thank you for that. Thank you for your understanding. A couple quick things I wanted to touch on before we dive into kind of the meat of this live stream, which I'm super excited about. But last week, during the live stream, we announced the Lifeliner Initiative. If you were tuned in last week, you'll remember that we announced the Lifeliner Initiative for Truth and Conviction. And I'll just briefly explain, because now it's happening. What this is we are inviting anyone who would like to submit or to nominate somebody that they know or somebody that they know of who, in their eyes and in their mind, is a lifeliner. And what we mean by that is someone who reaches out to save or help someone else. And that can be in very dramatic ways. I think of my friend Richard from the 4th grade, who, when we showed up at school one Monday morning, Richard wasn't there. And then we found out why. It's because Richard had a younger sister who had fallen into a canal, and he had jumped in to save her. Well, Richard didn't know how to swim. But he was able to get to his sister and push her out of the canal, but he wasn't able to make it out, and he drowned. I've never forgotten that. Of course, I've asked myself, would I have had the courage to do that? Would I, in the moment, have been that brave and just done that? Well, of course, his sister is grateful for the rest of her life. So in my mind, Richard, my friend Richard, is a lifeliner. Okay, now that's a very powerful example. But we've started receiving other examples from people who are submitting the names of maybe just a friend who could see that they were having a bad day or a bad month, and who reached out to them and genuinely asked, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" and meant it. That's a lifeliner too. And so we're inviting everybody to submit the names, and you can see there. So what you do is just this is really low tech. Okay, just pick up your phone and make a little what we're calling a Lifeliner video. It could be a 1 minute, 3 minute thing, just to tell us who this person is. You can say their name or not, as however you want to do that, and then just why to you they are an example of a lifeliner. And then post it on your social media. And then what you need to do is tag us. So it means, tag truth and conviction, truth ampersand, that little symbol, truth and conviction, and then hashtag lifeliner, one word, okay? So tag us at truth and conviction, hashtag lifeliner, submit that, or post that to your socials, to Facebook and Instagram, and we will we'll see it. And then we're going to create this really cool, for lack of a better word, a mosaic of your submissions, of voices who are, and faces who are telling us about someone in their life or someone that they know who is a lifeliner. And then as we're able to, coming up in November, we're actually going to have a really cool little event where we're going to show some of those and get to send some gifts to some of you who submit those. So again, just a plug for our Lifeliner initiative. I think it's really cool. It is, for me, what Helmuth was during his life. For him, he found the truth. You see that kid in the middle there, that's Helmuth. 16 years old right there. They were probably putting out flyers. I don't know if it was that night after that photo was taken, but they were involved in it, during that time. And he found out the truth, and he picked up in honor of the piano guys, he picked up the only instrument that he knew how to play, and that was a typewriter, and typed the truth, and then extended that lifeline to others by risking his life, and in the end, giving his life to spread the truth and share the truth with those around him who were, in a sense, in darkness. And so spreading some light to a world that had been inundated with propaganda. So I just think that's such a powerful concept, and I love the idea that these lifeliners, they're all around us. Okay, this isn't, it's not the exception to know of or to know someone who is a lifeliner. They're all around us doing things to help other people every day, all the time. And that's why we want to create this beautiful mosaic and let Truth and Conviction be a place where people can go and remember lifeliners, people are doing good all around us. Okay, so thank you for hearing me out again on that. I hope that you'll take just a minute and think of someone and then post that to your socials. Again, just tag truth and conviction, truth ampersand conviction, and then hashtag lifeliner, and we will see it. Okay, just a quick reminder that if you go to angel.com/truth, you can find out a lot more about this, about the Truth and Conviction series, about this true story of these teenagers who stood up to Hitler. And that's also the place where, if you feel so inclined, you can express interest in it. Right now, we're kind of gauging interest and seeing, who of you would really like to see this be made into a movie or into a series. And we'll talk more about that. I still say movie every once in a while because for a long time in this journey of getting this story told, it was just a movie, but now it's going to be so much more than that. And that will be the focus of what we talk about in just a few minutes. But again, if you go to angel.com/truth and express interest and let us know if these kinds of powerful stories are important to you, and let yourself be a part of helping us get there and get it made. Okay. Hearkening back for a moment to that conversation I was able to have with John Schmidt, and then you got to see just little portions of that interview that I did with his mother. And again, it's just a reminder to me that these were real people, I love that little detail that she gave. Of course, she said, he wanted to marry me. But then she kind of smiled and said, he even kissed me one time, and my father wasn't too pleased about that. So, it's just this little remember that Helmuth's friend Rudy was a teenager, and he was interested in girls, and obviously was a handsome kid himself, and so that these were real people. And so from a filmmaker's perspective, especially one who is obsessed with true stories, and particularly World War II stories, it's that opportunity and that challenge to take actual people, historical figures, in some cases historical heroes, and translate them into film characters. That process of gleaning and learning as much as I can about someone and about a story and about the people involved with it. But then, you can't just take that and say, okay, this is all going to be the movie. You have to. There's a craft. Of course, I'm sure that you know this. There's a craft involved in sculpting a true story and creating a script, a screenplay out of that, and then from there, that process of translating that screenplay into something that happens in front of a camera and eventually in front of an audience. And to me, it is absolutely magic. I know how to do that, and yet at the same time, it is still filled with beautiful magic and mystery to me. How an idea or a story that I hear about eventually becomes something that people either go to a theater or sit in their homes and on TV or on their phones now, watch a movie or a series based on this idea or this story that I heard and are moved by it. And sometimes it changes their lives, I'm a huge, huge fan of movies. There's a shot, you look at that shot there from a film that I wrote called Instrument of War, and these incredible actors, German and British actors in there that we shot with in Lithuania. Telling these kinds of stories is just so powerful and so magic to me, but there's also just a lot of the nuts and bolts and getting down to what are the steps that it takes to take something from a true story to a script to the screen. And so I wanted to just dive a little bit into that tonight with the story of Truth and Conviction. And so, of course, if you've watched any of my other live streams, I got to have visual aids. I got to have some props. And so I've brought some of those. Let me show you this. This is, let me hold that up so you can see it, and then I'll set it down. But this is a very, very old copy, and you can see how thick it is. So this is about a 123-page copy. Oh, there, cool. See, this is almost like a cooking show. They've put a really cool camera up there so you can see it. But this is back when, I'll hold this up, this was called Truth and Treason. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, yeah, cool. Look, they can zoom in on that. So this is back when it was called Truth and Treason. You can see that, I wrote, with my writing partner, Ethan Vincent, and together, this was, I don't know what draft this was. This copy is from, 2009. So this is probably draft, 50 or something like that. But it's fun I'm glad actually that we kept this old copy. And as if you kind of page through it, you can see that, we wrote a draft and probably thought when we hit, fade to black on page 123, we probably thought it was just perfect and beautiful. But then you take a few days and you come back to it and you realize, oh man, this needs work. And so, yeah, if you can go to that overhead camera shot again, you can see it's just filled with, our notes and scribbles and question marks and all those things, because we knew that, okay, so some of this is working, some of it isn't. Here's a line that he says, but you know what? We could cover that with a look instead of a line. Those kinds of things. And it's this really fun process, fun for me, of going through and finessing and honing and refining the script. Sometimes a screenplay for a film is referred to as the blueprint of the movie. And in a lot of ways, that in some ways that's accurate. It really is, like a blueprint for an edifice, for a home. Just gives all of those. It's what the people who are going to build the home base all of their decisions off of. And so it's so important with a script being the blueprint of this movie. It's so important that it conveys the everything that it needs to, so that the film will look like what it needs to at the end of the day. Yeah. So. Oh, there you go. That's even a better shot. You can kind of see just quickly some of those things that we thought were perfect when we wrote them, and then realized, oh no, we can make this better. So, for many years, and I'm going to say for about 19 years, this was the direction we were going. This is a script for a 2-hour movie. You may or may not know this, but in a properly formatted screenplay, a script page, I'll hold one up here, a script page like that will, on average, last about 1 minute. Okay, so it's about a minute per page. And so if I've got a 123-page script here, that's about a 2-hour movie, a little bit over a 2-hour movie. As I've mentioned before, when we started meeting with Angel Studios, their reaction was, man, we love this story. This is so powerful. We really want to do this with you guys, but we think it should be a limited series and not just a one-off movie. And as you've heard me say, if you've tuned in before, you've heard me say that at first my reaction was, no, I think we've got a great script here, 2-hour movie. This is what this is. And then I had a really cool experience where just a few minutes later, I just kind of saw 4 episodes. So instead of 1 2-hour movie, I saw 4 episodes. I saw how they started and ended and all that. And so, and at the end of the second episode, I saw this incredibly powerful cliffhanger. The third episode, I saw what was going to happen. And then this powerful climax in the 4th episode. And all that kind of came to me as we were meeting with the guys from Angel Studio. And I'm sure I was still listening to what they were saying, but I was really just thinking, whoa, they're right. They're right. This is much more powerful as a 4-episode limited series. And what that did, so there's this, which became, I went home and started writing these. I don't know if you can see those. 45 to a minute long episodes. So if you see this one, it says episode 101, Truth and Conviction, episode 101, When the Night Cometh. So that's the title. And once you see the episode, you'll understand a little bit more what that title, When the Night Cometh, refers to. But I just wanted to take just a few minutes tonight and kind of dive into just episode 1, and kind of give some peeks into how we are approaching these characters. We have this 16-year-old kid, Helmuth Hübner, who, like I said, even, of course, I didn't get to meet him in person, but he was a real person. There's evidence he had a crush on this girl at the office, which happened to be City Hall. He was working for the government, and she was working there with him. And going from a 2-hour movie to a limited series allowed us to delve into that subplot and delve into his interest in this girl at work. So I just want to take maybe just a couple minutes and kind of describe for you the way we're approaching some of these characters and how we're introducing them, and kind of what takes us through the arc of episode 1 of Truth and Conviction. I'll avoid spoilers, and I'll make sure not to give too much away. But there are some really cool things I think that people may be interested to find out. That when you go to page 1, one of the fun things about doing episodic television and streaming series now is some of these series are coming up with some really, really cool cold open. And I don't know if you can see that even at the top of right there. We call it a cold open. And it's usually some gripping scene that immediately grabs your attention and brings up some questions for you, like, wait a minute, who is this? What's happening? It makes you want to definitely watch what's going to happen next. And so I promise I won't read a whole bunch here, but if I can I'll just read this very, very brief cold open, okay? And it says, interior, the chamber, night. The first thing we see is his face, calm, reflective, head shaved, eyes downcast. In total silence, a searchlight washes over him, and he looks up with his piercing blue eyes right at us. And another stab of light burns across him. From behind, we see the back of his shaved head, meager neck, bare and bony shoulders, framed between two narrow arched windows. A final blinding searchlight shuttles past the narrow windows just before we jolt to black. And then right after that, we go to this incredible chase scene where we see that same kid that we just saw, that face with the shaved head, in some sort of a chamber. It's not clear where he is, but then we cut to and we see that same kid running for his life down an alleyway being chased by a member of the Gestapo. And then those are quickly over, and then we go into the opening credit sequence, and then after that, we see that same kid. Of course, that kid was Helmuth at two different points that we'll see in more depth later on in the series. Both of those actually not even in the first episode. We're already planting seeds and giving hints of things that we're going to see and experience in later episodes of the series. But right after that, our first actual opening scene is of the four friends. Helmuth with his best friends, Karl-Heinz Schnibe, Rudi Woba, and one who's not in here, but another good friend, Salomon Schwartz, who was there's a photo of Salomon, who was Jewish, and was also one of their friends, and Salomon was his arrest by the Gestapo and his disappearance when he was taken and ended up in a concentration camp was for Helmuth kind of the final catalyst to start his resistance efforts. He was learning the truth from the BBC radio the shortwave radio that his brother had gotten hearing the BBC broadcasts. He was learning other parts of the truth from some banned books and banned literature from the archive at his work where he worked. But it was that third thing. It was his good friend, his Jewish friend Salomon, and his disappearance that was really the final straw. And so, but in this first scene in the script, it's before all that. And it's these four boys standing at the top of a little cliff over a lake or a river, trying to dare each other to have the courage to jump into the water. And Helmuth is afraid of heights. And so he's, even though it was his idea to get him up there, now he's kind of chickening out. And we get to get these insights. So we meet Carl, who's full of bravado and kind of, just a jokester. And he's, of course, the first one to jump off, have the courage to jump off. And then everybody else follows suit. But even though we're in Nazi Germany, we're quickly immersed in the friendship and the characters of these four teenage boys who are dead set on finding adventure and fun, even in Nazi Germany. Of course, the very next scene, they're confronted with a Hitler Youth leader who's asking them why weren't they at Hitler Youth, and Carl, why don't you have your uniform on? And quickly we get a glimpse into the other side of things. Another character that I want to talk to you about and how we introduce him, that's a really important thing in any script, is the first scene where you meet a new character and how they're introduced, what is immediately grabbing or engaging about them. You may have heard me mention in past live streams that for me, learning Helmuth's story was life-changing and so powerful. But as I dug deeper into the details of the story, and Carl had told me about the Gestapo agent who was obsessed for about a year trying to hunt down whoever was putting out these treasonous flyers. and Carl only knew him by his last name. He knew him as Agent Musner, and that's kind of, at that time, that's all we knew about him. But over the years of lots of digging, we were able to unearth and find and discover much more about this man who, during the day and during the night, he was chasing people and during, torturing people, frankly, for information. But then he would go home, and he was a loving husband and father. And we know that now. We know that who he was married to. We know the family that he had. We have very direct evidence of what kind of person he was. As I became more and more aware of this character, I just became so fascinated, and it became very important to me and to Ethan Vincent, my co-writer, that these two characters, this young 16-year-old resistance fighter and this hardened Gestapo agent who, like I said, could do really bad things, but also somehow was loving and kind to his family. Their two stories kind of interweave back and forth, especially throughout the first episode. We're just meeting them, and as the Gestapo agent finds those first flyers and those kinds of things, and seeing those stories weave together until, of course, eventually, not in the first episode, but eventually, those two stories collide. And it would change both of them forever, change the rest of their lives. So how we introduce the Gestapo agent was very important to Ethan and me as we were kind of crafting this. Now, there's a lot, of course, that we don't know about him, but so we have to kind of fill in and flesh out put flesh on the bones, if you will. But in the very first scene, of course, there's that cold open where we see him chasing Helmut down that alleyway. But then after that cold open, we kind of flash back to early 1941, and we just see this man standing outside of his office. We don't know who he is or where we are. And then a car pulls up, and his wife is driving, and she hands him his little Instamatic camera. He's a camera bug. He loves taking photos. And she says, you left it in your other coat. And he says, thanks. And he has this little conversation with her, and with, she's holding their little 3-year-old daughter, and their 10-year-old son is there, and they're going to the movies. They're going to the matinee. And even his little son asks him, hey, Dad, can you come with us? Come to the matinee. And he says, I can't. I'm in the middle of a meeting right now. And so they say their goodbyes and drive off. And then he turns, and we follow him into the building where he's going to go back to the meeting that he's in. And he's interrogating someone. And that's the meeting that he was referring to his family. You see that hallway there. That's an actual Gestapo prison hallway and prison cells that we'll actually be filming there in Lithuania. Very, very chilling and powerful place to work. But so that's the way we introduce our character, our Gestapo agent, and I just think it's so powerful. So by the end of episode 1, you really know who this 16-year-old boy is, and you're rooting for him, and you're feeling for him. You're also getting to know this Gestapo agent who at first you think, oh, well, who is this guy? And then you think, oh, he's doing horrible things, and then you see him being a kind and loving father. These were real things. These were real people. We got a comment here. It says, because the Nazis were brainwashed that they were doing good work, from Lynn Rochelle. Lynn, thank you for that. And that is such a good point to make, is that they were inundated with propaganda. Most of them could get was whatever Hitler wanted them to hear. And it was, someone like Helmuth Hübner, who got access to this banned shortwave radio, an illegal shortwave radio, got access to the truth. That's what opened his eyes. So thank you, Lynn, for that comment. I just wanted, so anyway, I kind of get, you can see that I get caught up and kind of excited about this, but there is a moment in episode 1. I mentioned earlier that Helmut's dear friend, Salomon Schwartz, his Jewish friend, was eventually arrested and taken. And we don't know the details of what happened that night that he was taken by the Gestapo, and so we've had to kind of flesh out. We know that shortly before that happened, Helmut had gone to visit him, and other friends had gone to visit him, but we don't know the details of what happened in there. And so that is something that we had to kind of create. There he is again. That young man was taken by the Gestapo, and eventually ended up in a concentration camp. So we, as I'm writing this with my writing partner, we're trying to figure out, well, what could this have been like? And so we ended up writing this short little scene. I'll actually pull it up from the old script, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But I'm gonna just. Oh, okay. Yeah, it sounds like they're saying that the kitchen camera for the overhead is not working. But I'll just here. Let me just show you. That's the scene that I'm talking about. Takes up about that much space right there. The scene of the arrest of Salomon Schwartz, and I just want to dive in, because what we did a number of years ago, quite a few years ago now, we shot some concept scenes, some concept footage from this old script, and so it's really cool for me now to look at this, and we're gonna kind of go through and just very quickly read this little scene, and then we're going to look at the storyboards, because we did before you shoot just about any scene, very often, you may be familiar with the term storyboards, which is just kind of like comic book cells, but it basically breaks down how a scene will look before you shoot it. And so we have very talented artists who come in and sketch these out. I have zero talent in that way, but we have these talented artists who come in and sketch out these storyboards and help to visualize the scene the way that the director wants it to look. And it's kind of an effective way to convey to others. We may read it in the script and see things differently, but once you get storyboards, you get a much clearer idea of, oh, I see, you're seeing it from that angle, and then we're going to move to this shot and then cut to this. So I'm just going to quickly read this very brief scene of Solomon's arrest, and then we're going to look at those storyboards and see how at each step of the process, things get a little bit more refined and not necessarily exactly like it's written in the script. So this is what it says. It says, interior, Solomon's bedroom, night. Solomon parts the curtains and peers out his window. On the street below him, 4 SA officers pile out of a truck. The curtains close. A needle drops on an old 78. A record player emits the crackling melody of strings, Mendelssohn. Fingers tremble as they trace across the spines of books. Solomon pulls a thick one from the shelf, then reaches behind it and retrieves a deep red one, Thomas Mann, An Appeal to Reason. He drags a chair from the desk to the middle of the room, sits, stands quickly, slips on a jacket, sits again. Footsteps thump down the hallway. Solomon deliberately opens the red book. Bam, bam, bam. Solomon closes his eyes. So that brief little scene is our imagination of what that must have been like for him to do that. And that book that's referenced, this red book, was a book written by a banned author named Thomas Mann. He was a banned German author, and the book was called An Appeal to Reason. So even in his last moments, we see him doing something, an act of resistance, by sitting down with that book. Now, we did up some storyboards before we shot this concept scene. Ryan, can you bring up the story? Okay, so this is where, so by the time we were getting ready to shoot this, those first lines about peeking out of the curtains and everything, I thought, no, you know what? I just want to start this scene by seeing a close-up of the phonograph and the needle dropping onto that record. Yeah, there you go. And you can hear that sounds from outside, wheels screech to a stop, men yelling. And then what's the next shot that it cuts to? Then we see his hand, and you see that arrow pointing that tells you that his fingers are kind of just softly tracing across these books. And then that's where he pulls out the big book and reaches behind it and grabs the little red one. And I have a close-up of that. And then that top left one, that's where at the time we were going to go up past that shot, there you go, of having him wearing the Star of David on his sleeve and going up across that. And let's go to the next one, to a close-up on his face as he turns, as he hears the Gestapo coming down the hallway, getting closer and closer. And then he takes the chair, moves it to the center of the room, sits down, and opens the book. And then he looks up at the door as they start pounding on the door. It says footsteps thump down, and then pounding, bam, bam, bam on the door. We see him looking, and then we cut back to him, and he closes his eyes just as we hear the door bursting open. So that is the storyboard that we put together for that scene. And now you may have, if you've tuned into other live streams or been to angel.com/truth, you've probably seen this scene because I love to show it. But we're going to stop and start a little bit. I kind of I've asked Ryan to let us kind of start watching this, and I may kind of talk us through just some of the elements of this scene, because what often happens is that you'll have a great scene scripted out, and you'll have these storyboards all planned out, and then you get on set, and then the actor may say, "Oh, what if I did this? What if I did this instead?" And as a director, I have to be open to that. I have to be open to those good ideas that are going to come from someone else, and say, "Ooh, yeah, let's do that." So as we watch through what we actually shot, I'm probably going to stop and start things a little bit. And Ryan, if you don't mind, just we may have to press stop and rewind and see. So if we can, let's just start this out and see what we see. Okay, there it is. I don't know if you got to see, it says Mendelssohn in the center of that. And then we just see that close-up of him putting that down. And of course, the importance of Mendelssohn is that was a banned Jewish author who was one of Helmut's favorites. And we believe that Solomon may have introduced Mendelssohn to Helmut. And there he hears that. Now let's stop there. Can you stop that there for a second? If you remember, in the script and in the storyboard, we had the Star of David was going to be, he's going to be wearing it around his sleeve there. But somebody on set, it may have been, and you may recognize that actor. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the way it was storyboarded. But then if we go back out to the scene, you'll see that he's not wearing that. Somebody on set had a great idea that I thought that we needed to do differently. And so we're going to see the Star of David, but it's going to come in a moment. Okay, go ahead. He grabs the red book, and then go ahead and play that. And then as scripted, and as in the storyboards. But now we have him putting on his jacket before he sits down, and that's where you see the Star of David, because they also were sometimes sewn onto the. Thank you for stopping it there, Ryan. And you can see it says Jude, which is German for Jew. And sometimes they were required to have them sewn. They could wear them on their sleeve. They could wear them, sewn onto the front like that. And so there was a decision made. Let's put it there, and you'll see in just a moment why that decision was made. Go ahead and play it, Ryan. Okay, stop it there. Somebody had the idea of let's let him, the last act of defiance, let's let him tear off that Star of David that the Nazis are forcing him to wear, and tear it off and drop it on the ground. Now, I get chills. I've seen this so many times, and I get chills every time I see that. But there's a moment that happens in just a few seconds here that I actually didn't see on the day. There's a little detail that I didn't notice until we were in the editing room. And then I saw it, and again, I got chills. So Ryan, go ahead and play it from there. Okay, stop there. You see him drop that Star of David and then puts his foot on top of it and steps on it. I need to ask our actor there, my good friend Ethan Vincent, my co-writer, who I said, hey, will you come play this part for us in this little concept scene we're doing? I need to ask him if he remembers if he did that on purpose or if that's just something that happened in the moment. But for me, just one of those really powerful little detail moments that wasn't in the script, that wasn't in the storyboards, that I didn't even notice when we were filming it. But there it was on film. We saw it in the editing room and just thought, okay, that's just one of those blessed little details, blessed little moments. So, okay, go ahead and play that forward as he hears them getting closer and closer to his door. Okay. Thank you, Ryan, for that. Just to hold it right there just for a second, that look right there I think conveys just this beautiful mixture of terror and defiance. Scared to death, but not going to let them win. Just so powerful for me. Ryan, can we, let's just go now that we've kind of crawled through it and seen some of those details and everything like that, if we can just take a moment and watch the whole thing through from the very beginning to the end and just kind of see what that idea that we came up with of what this must have been like from the script page to the storyboards to shooting it on camera to the final scene of this concept scene. You want to go ahead and play that?
Friedrichstraße 12. Los! Los, Bewegung! Ganz so hoch. Zweite Etage. 2A. Schwarz. Salomon heißt die Jugendsau. Ihr zwei. Hintenrum. Das weißt du. Bitte zu fliehen. Wieder. Zurück in die Wohnung. Salomon wohnt hier. Wir beraten schon seit Wochen. Ein Mann geht jetzt ein Tag aus und 600 Früh jeden Morgen. Das ist der küssige Freundin, Schwester. Sie sind doch auch Jüdin. Sie sind Jüdin. Nein! Wir haben noch einen Jüdin. Haben Sie seit Wochen beobachtet. Wir wissen genau. Weiter! Hinten in die Tür rein. Los! Wir gehen jetzt hier rein. So wollen wir durchkommen. Scheißtür ein! Los! Salomon, komm raus! Mach die Tür auf! Salomon, mach die Tür! Mach die verdammte Tür!
Yeah, like I said, I've seen that scene hundreds of times now, and it gets me every single time. I think that's just a little sliver of a glimpse of a reason why I do this. And specifically in this case, why I'm trying to tell this story. There was a teenage boy named Solomon who was taken away from of course, from his friends, but from his family, and who never came back. And there was a young man named Helmuth who was his friend, who said, enough is enough, and I'm going to do something about it. So, you know what, everybody, thank you so much for kind of indulging me and letting me just kind of take us through, just to give you a glimpse of just a concept scene. Of course, when we go and shoot episode 1 and shoot the other episodes of Truth and Conviction, we'll be reshooting that scene. Hopefully better. I'm sure that it will be, but we've set the bar kind of high there. I just feel the power of that every time that I watch it. But so I'll put these wonderful scripts away. I'm just so so excited to be able to shoot 4 episodes and dive deep on these. So I hope that, there was a comment. Let's see, it says lump in the throat for me listening to it from Tina Urain. Tina, thank you. I get the same thing. Like I say, I've seen it many times, and I get a lump in my throat just about every time that I watch it. So again, just a little flavor, just a little taste of the power of the story and what's to come. I would encourage you, if you feel so inclined, to go to angel.com/truth. It's interesting that I'm a lousy salesman, but I'm a passionate storyteller. And so when I say go to angel.com/truth, I just want to share more about this story. And if you get a chance to go over there and just express interest, if this is the kind of story you want to help us tell, then I'd be so, of course, grateful to do that. Okay. Man, that was fun, and I got a little worked up. Let's see, hey, thank you, Garrett. Garrett brought me on our wonderful little quarter-size sheet. And let's see, we got a message from Kip Meekum. Hi, Kip. Such amazing storytelling. Thank you, Kip. I appreciate that. I agree. It's a powerful story, and it needs to be told, in my humble opinion. But Garrett just brought me, we had some people, people who have been expressing interest. We have Eric S. from Pennsylvania who expressed interest at $1,000. We have Mitchell L. At $1,000. We have Janice A., I believe, at $150. We have Anonymous. He's jumping up all over the place. Anonymous from New York at $23. Thank you so much for all of those. And I know that there were many others of you who have been expressing interest at angel.com/truth, and I'm very grateful. That's how this works. How this working with Angel Studios, how these movies and series get made. It's power to the people. And I think that would make Helmuth proud. I think he would love this kind of model for telling powerful stories that don't always get the attention that they should from Hollywood. And I'm not Hollywood bashing. Please don't take it that way. Some of my very favorite movies have come out of Hollywood. But sometimes it's hard to find some of the best stories, and that's what I think Truth and Conviction is an example of that. One of those just powerful true stories that, with the partnership of Angel Studios and with your interest and involvement, that we can tell and tell it to the world. So again, thanks to you and to everybody who's been able to express interest. I'm going to change gears real quick. Just a couple more things I wanted to talk about. We just got these today. I'll see if I can hold this up so you can see it. This is a shirt, and if you can see, let's see if I can hold this up more clearly. Oh, I'm doing a horrible job at this. It's kind of backwards. Okay, so if you see that says remember, and behind that are the numbers 27, 10, 42. So Helmut, there. Can we do that one more time? There we go. There we go. October 27th, 1942. And that word remember. That is the day that Helmuth Hübner was executed outside of Plötzensee prison, outside of the city of Berlin, as a 17-year-old. And that day is an important date. And here we are 80 years later, remembering. Next week will be the 80th anniversary. We have a comment that says, I so appreciate your passion, heart, and conviction to testify of these young, courageous young men. Corrine Higa. Corrine, thank you. That makes me feel good. I do feel passionate about this story. We also... So I talked about the date, and there's just kind of an example in red. We've got red T-shirts, and these gray kind of long-sleeved shirts. Let me just try and hold it up so you can. I don't know if you can see that, but man, I just love that. I love what that is, the subtleness, and on the sleeve where it says truth and conviction over there. But I'm not selling things. At this point, these are not for sale. The reason that we made these is because next week we're going to Germany because the German government is going to be remembering Helmut. And so on Thursday, October 27th, in the chamber where he was executed, there's an image of it there. Thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up. It's now a national memorial. If you remember, hold that up there for a second, Ryan. Do you mind going back to that image before of the chamber? And you can see it there. You see those two arched windows. Now, if you'll remember that opening cold open that I read, and that young man with the shaved head standing in front of two arched windows, that was a description of the actual execution chamber where he gave his life. And in that same chamber, next week on the 27th, the German government will be honoring him. And we, the Truth and Conviction team, I with my partners Russ Kendall and John Foss, also with members of the Angel Studios team, will be going over there to participate, to take part in that memorial service, and also to be up in Hamburg to kind of go in the footsteps of Helmut, the places where he lived, where he went to school, even some of the cells that he was held in after his arrest. And so we're going to be there all next week. We had these shirts made so that we can wear them in honor and give them out to people in honor of 27 October, 27/10/42, and to remember. Remember Helmut, remember Carl and Rudy, remember what they did, and remember all those who stood up for truth. And so I would invite everybody. Next week on the 27th, we will be doing a live stream from Germany, from just outside of this memorial, this execution chamber. And that you can see a good shot of it there. We'll be outside there, and on the 27th. And I would invite all of you to mark that down in your calendars. And of course, we'll be there all week, and so we'll be sending posts, social posts, and doing another live stream. I think a couple days before that. Just want to make everybody aware of that, and give. I just love the way these turned out, man. So I just think it's so dang cool. And we got a comment here. Oh, I would buy one of those. Let's see, who is that? Janelle Lurance. I would say Lurance in French. Janelle Lurance, thank you. That was, like I said, Janelle, as of right now, they're not for sale, but they may be in the future. And I just love them, and I think they're great. And we'll be wearing. You'll see us wearing them next week in memory of Helmut. And I hope that you can tune in to that. Okay, let's see. It seems like there were a couple other just quick announcements that I needed to make. Ryan, were there any questions? I forgot to even say up front that I'm happy to answer questions. Were there any questions? One or two questions that I can answer I've got time for? Great. You want to put those up, and I'll take off my readers so that I can read. It says, when do you start receiving funds to move it forward, from Fonda Hart? Fonda, thank you. That's a great question. I can't be specific, but I can say this, man, we're close. We're in the expressing interest phase, gauging interest, and so it has to reach kind of a certain point, and a whole bunch of things have to be lined up before we know that, okay, we're ready now for all those people who did express interest. Now, we'll then have that opportunity to invest, and so of course, again, we're as soon as we reach those, get everything lined up, and are able to do that, we'll make a big announcement so that everybody knows about it, and then at that point, the cool thing, that's where it gets really cool, because that's when it becomes real. That's when people can say, you know what, I've talked a lot about that we need good movies. I've talked a lot about that why can't they make a movie about this? This gives us all an opportunity to, in a sense, put our money where our mouth is. So Fonda, again, thank you for that question. We will be sure and let everybody know as soon as that opportunity opens up, and we can start that that process of getting the financing in place. It says, will there be any actual torture scenes in the series? From Happy Odd Girl. Thank you. That's a really good question. Short answer, yes, there will be, and I don't take that lightly. This was Nazi Germany, and I mentioned this last week, but I have read the notes, the minutes that were taken by the Gestapo as they were interrogating Helmuth Hübner and his friends after they arrested them. And they would use these terms like, after assiduous persuasion, we convinced the young man to share such and such. Well, that term, assiduous persuasion, what do you think that means? Yeah, it means they tortured him and they beat him. And so we're going to be very careful and very cautious, but also real in the way that we portray those scenes. It's important to me that it's important to me that this be something that a parent would feel comfortable with their teenagers being able to watch. But at the same time, I don't want to make light or lighten something that was not light, but that was very heavy. And so it's kind of a long answer to a really good question, but there will be some of that in this film, and I feel very strongly about the importance of shooting that and conveying that accurately but appropriately. Okay. All right. Any other questions, Ryan? Okay. Good. We will stop there. Thank you, man. Everybody, thank you so much. And one more time for you Piano Guys fans that are still with us, and all of you, Truth and Conviction fans, Angel Studios fans. Thank you for tuning in. We are in the process of figuring out when we're going to reschedule the Piano Guys, so that and of course we'll let everybody know that as soon as we do. It's going to be we already had it planned out, and they were super excited about it. There's some really cool things that they're going to be doing when they're on with us live. I can't say much more than that, but just know that we'll let everybody know when that's going to happen. Again, tune in next week when we are in Germany, in Helmuth's footsteps. And I hope that you'll tune in for that. Go to angel.com/truth and express interest. And we will see you from Germany. See you next week.
Salomon wohnt hier. Wir beraten schon seit Wochen. Ein Mann geht jetzt ein Tag aus und 600 jeden Morgen. Das ist der küssige Freundin, Schwester. Das sind doch auch Jüdin. Die sind Jüdin. Nein! Wir haben noch einen Jüdin. Wir haben sie seit Wochen beobachtet. Wir wissen genau. Weiter! Hinten in die Tür rein. Los! Wir gehen jetzt hier rein. So wollen wir durchkommen. Scheiß Tür ein! Los! Salomon, komm raus! Mach die Tür auf!
You've just seen the proof of concept trailer for Truth and Conviction, which will be the first dramatic series about teenage resistance fighters in Nazi Germany. It tells the true story of Helmuth Hübner, who at 16 years old was willing to sacrifice his life to stand up for truth and freedom. There will be more powerful scenes to follow, but I just wanted to take a moment and invite you to join us. If you think this story should be a series, show your support. Click or visit angel.com/truth and let us know.
Matt, take 2, cam AC. Mark.
How did you first discover this story of Helmuth Hübner?
I heard about an old man who was the last surviving member of a teenage Nazi resistance group named Karl-Heinz Schnibe. Heard that he lived less than an hour away from me. I just called him up on the phone, asked if he would be willing to share his story with me. He said, yeah, sure, come on up. So I went up to his house, sat down with him, and let him just share what his experience was as a 17-year-old with his best friend Helmuth Hübner and another friend Rudy, 15, 16, 17 years old, standing up against Hitler. And they weren't using guns or fists to do it. They were using a typewriter.
I was scared. I was actually scared because we read in the newspaper every day how severely these people get punished. The Nazis, they don't want you to know the truth, you know. The truth was deadly in Germany. But I was nosy enough to want to know more.
The story that Carl told me that day has changed the rest of my life. I walked out of his house that day just knowing we have to make this into a movie. We have to tell this story.
We've had the opportunity to become really close friends with Carl over the years. He would share these experiences that he had. He would often get this distant look in his eyes. You could tell he was back in those moments. But to hear this, 80-year-old man saying, this is what we did, that brings a reality to it, that it's just not just a story, but people lived this. What came out of that was, this, not only we have to tell this story, but feel entrusted to tell the story from Carl. The screenplay is incredibly powerful. Matt Whitaker and his writing partner Ethan Vincent have really captured this engaging character piece set within Nazi Germany. And it's gained the attention of Hollywood producers, including Jerry Mullen, who was the Academy Award winner for Schindler's List. He understands the power and the importance of telling stories from that era.
It's really amazing to me to think this kid was 16. He wasn't 25, wasn't 42, he was 16 years old. And had enough to realize that he wasn't going to give in to something that he saw was wrong.
One of the most important parts of the story for me was Helmuth's friendship with Salomon Schwartz, who was Jewish. One day, Salomon disappeared and the Gestapo arrested him, and Helmuth never saw his friend again.
We went to church, to our church house, and there was a sign on the door which read, Juden ist der Zutritt verboten. Jews not allowed to enter. And we had one Jewish member in our branch, Salomon Schwartz. And they didn't let that young man in. He stood outside the door, and when we opened up with opening him, he was crying, but they didn't let him in.
I wonder how I would feel if somebody took my best friend away. What would I do? For Helmuth, it was time to sit down and start typing up the truth. It wasn't too long after Helmuth started typing up these leaflets and putting them out that he realized he needed help. And so he went right to his two good friends, Karl Schnibe and Rudy Woba, and asked him to help him.
Helmuth said, let's make a promise. He who gets caught first takes the blame. Don't incriminate anybody. And that sounded good to me because I thought I'm cool. I was the oldest, I said, they don't catch me. So I said, all right. So we went that night home with about 15 flyers, and Helmuth typed on it, Hitler the murderer, Hitler is the guilty one. I put him in telephone booths, I put him in mailboxes. The following Sunday in church, he saw me coming and he waved at me and I waved back and he yelled to the church, they haven't arrested you yet, have they? And I said, will you shut up? I was, so that was Helmuth, joking,
They were dispersing these treasonous leaflets throughout Hamburg, Germany. They'd put them in phone booths and mailboxes and sneak them into coat pockets at the opera, eluding the Gestapo for almost a year.
Eventually, they were caught. They went to trial. At a certain point, Helmuth decided he had to stand up and he had to take the attention and focus all on himself to save his two friends. And so that's exactly what he did. He stood up, he did what was right, and he let the consequences follow. Helmuth was executed for standing up for truth. Carl and Rudy spent years in prison and in hard labor. An experience I'll never forget was going with Carl back to Germany and visiting some of those places where he was held as a prisoner, as a 17-year-old. But also visiting the site where Helmuth was executed. And being there with Carl was truly moving. There was a busload of teenagers that pulled up with their high school teacher. And they got out and they were looking, visiting this site. And he just immediately gathered all of his students around Carl and said, "Tell us your story." To watch Carl tell them what he had done when he was their age was so powerful. They were getting it. That for me was when a seed was really planted. I began to realize that this isn't just a powerful story. This is a story that changes people who hear it. Just another quick invite. If you want to see this story made into a series, click or visit angel.com/truth to show your support. Don't worry, you're not buying or committing to anything. We just need to gauge how many of you want to be a part of bringing this story to the world.
And action!
We are partnering with Baltic Films in Vilnius, Lithuania to shoot Truth and Conviction. We produced 2 films with them previously, and we're excited to go back and work with a really great production partner. They previously produced HBO's Chernobyl series, as well as HBO's John Adams miniseries and the BBC's War and Peace. Another partnership we're very excited about is with Angel Studios. They've had such incredible success with the Chosen series, and we're excited to bring this project to the global audience that they've been able to reach.
Our mission is to tell stories that amplify light. And when we saw the story of Truth and Conviction and what the creators behind that story, we realized that they were going to be able to tell a story that has those same principles that The Chosen and any other project that amplifies light. And it's a story that needs to be told today. It's a story that matters now.
Helmuth had big blue eyes, I mean really big, dark blue eyes. And I never saw Helmuth emotionally, He never showed his emotion when something happened. And when I put my arms around him, I told Helmuth, I see you pretty soon. His eyes filled with tears. And he said to me, I hope you have a better life and a better Germany. And then he cried.
We talk about stories like Helmuth's story of someone sacrificing their life for someone else. I've always felt that there's like this, across humanity, it's like there's this deep connection with those kinds of stories. For me, that's what Helmuth did. At some point, he must have known he was going to be sacrificing his life to do that, but he did it anyway. That compels me to tell this story.
I personally am asking you to get this made, get it out there, let the world understand what this young German kid did in 1942. Talk to your friends and tell them, even though he died in 1942, his example of courage, of character, of commitment, we're talking about today. I love what he's about. I want to be just like him.
Thanks for watching. Help us share this powerful story to honor Helmuth, Carl, and Rudy, and hopefully inspire a new generation. To express your interest in this series, click now or go to angel.com/truth to show your support.